Jackalope. In the Fallout universe, the Jackalope has the strange distinction of being the only cryptid you'll never actually encounter as a living creature. And that might be the creepiest thing about it. You see it everywhere in Appalachia. Plushies on camp shelves, mounted taxidermy heads in winter, spring, and standard variants, custom gun racks shaped like its silhouette, a sign for Priblos Curios, Fasnacht masks worn at festivals, including a glowing radioactive version, and a name drop in the in-game radio play Rip Daring and the Cryptid Hunt. But never, in dozens of locations and hundreds of hours of content, does a living jackalope actually show up. The closest you get is back in Fallout 2, where you can name a mole rat jackalope for a wrestling match called Mole Rat Mambo at Reading, meaning the only living jackalope in the entire franchise is a renamed rodent in an underground fight club. There's also a pre-war Fallout 2 note from a writer named Daniel Bird, pitching the jackalope as America's new national mascot, then asking the small caveat, is this even an American creature? Well, in the real world, the jackalope cryptid came from 1930s Wyoming, when a taxidermist named Douglas Herrick chucked a dead jackrabbit next to some deer antlers, glued them together, and sold the hybrid for $10 to a hotel that promptly declared itself the jackalope capital of America. But the whole thing is a bit more creepier when you realize there's a kernel of biological truth underneath the hoax. In-game Appalachia plasters its walls with images of a creature nobody can prove exists, one loosely inspired by a real disease that does. You start to wonder what the actual thing looked like. Ogua. The Ogua has been pulling people under the water for nearly 3 centuries in our reality, and Bethesda decided that it was a great inspiration to pull from. In real-world West Virginia folklore, the Ogua is described as a 20-foot, 1,500-pound alligator snapping turtle that lives in the Ohio, Allegheny, and Monongahela rivers. It's sometimes said to have 2 heads, can come onto land, and is specifically known for crushing deer whole, because just being a giant turtle wasn't intimidating enough. The legend traces back to 1745 in Holt, West Virginia, where a 12-year-old boy was supposedly dragged underwater while fishing with his family and never seen again. Sightings have continued in Marion County ever since, with a notable resurgence in 1983. In Fallout 76, the Ogua arrived with the Once in a Blue Moon update, and the developers leaned into the creepiness by tying it directly to the cult of the Mothman. The cult has been actively tracking the Ogua through Cranberry Bog, believing its ancient blood holds divine secrets and the ability to see into the past, so they're hunting it so they can sacrifice it to a giant moth god. The in-game creature has a special ability to hide inside its shell, becoming briefly invulnerable while it considers its next move, which is genuinely unsettling when you're staring at a 6,000 HP boulder that you just emptied a magazine into. There's also the bleached Ogua variant in Burning Springs, an orange and white version that's somehow even angrier than the original, and that spawns as a legendary boss during the final wave of the Sinkhole Solutions public event. Jersey Devil. So a woman in real-world colonial New Jersey gets pregnant with her 13th child, decides she's done with motherhood, and out loud curses the unborn baby, saying it will be the devil. Most parents have rough days, but this one took it to a level where the universe apparently filed the paperwork. According to Pine Barrens folklore, Jane Leeds gave birth to a dragon-like abomination that immediately fled into the wilderness and became the stuff of legend. And so the Jersey Devil has been part of New Jersey's identity ever since, depicted on collectible cards, pre-war cigarette ads, and just about every regional ghost story for the last 300 years. In Fallout 76's Expeditions Atlantic City update, Bethesda took that legend and made it real. In the game, the Jersey Devil actually exists, and so do its offspring known as Lesser Devils, which keep emerging from the Pine Barrens and shambling into Atlantic City for reasons nobody can fully explain. When Atlantic City crime boss Antonio Russo first went looking for the devil, he thought it would be intelligent enough to make a deal with. It wasn't. It was just a hostile dragon-shaped animal that bit his ankles until he had to kill it. Where it gets nasty is the devil's blood itself. The stuff is so addictive and potent that Russo and his associate Gene turned it into devil's blood, a chem so rare and expensive that only the high rollers in Atlantic City can afford it. The catch is that the lesser devils, the source of the supply, are actually juveniles. The real Jersey Devil is bigger, older, and considerably worse. It's also functionally invincible. During the quest Sins of the Father, you can drain it of its hit points, but the devil doesn't actually die. It just flies away, which means it's still out there, somewhere in the Pine Barrens waiting. Beast of Beckley. Imagine being followed your whole life by something with yellow eyes that's taller than your father, smiles with sharp teeth, and somehow shows up wherever you go, even when you visit family in another state. That's the real-world report submitted by a woman named Raven to the National Cryptid Society in 2019. She and her brother claim to have been stalked by a black humanoid creature in the woods outside Beckley, West Virginia, for nearly 2 decades, including one incident where she watched it standing in front of her father's truck at 3 a.m., just outside her dining room window. Bethesda took the name and ran with it, though they swapped out the creature entirely. In Fallout 76, the Beast of Beckley is a unique albino wolf cryptid that's been roaming Appalachia since before the Great War, raising her pups in a den somewhere in the wilderness, which means this thing predates nuclear apocalypse by a wide margin. She's also pretty good at murking taxidermists. The quest Unsolved Death in Taxidermy follows what happened to Janelle Priblo, the same Priblo from Priblo's Curios, who set off into the woods to trap the beast after hearing about a shredded bear and sightings of a pale monster near Beckley. Her brother Raymond showed up to help, ignored her warnings, and got killed by the beast immediately. Janelle, wanting revenge, tried to leave the area to assemble a hunting party of her own. The beast attacked her on the way out and killed her too. In-game, she always spawns as a legendary enemy with her pups around her, meaning every encounter is essentially a small family reunion of things that want you dead, in a den built specifically for the purpose of raising more of them. Wendigo. They say you are what you eat, and in this case, munching on a person doesn't make you more of a person, it makes you a Wendigo. It's not really a cryptid in the traditional sense. It's what you become when you start munching on other people. In Algonquian folklore, the Wendigo is a malevolent spirit tied to winter, famine, and starvation. It possesses people who commit acts of selfishness, greed, or munching on people, then forces them to keep consuming human flesh until they transform into something monstrous. Many indigenous people consider the Wendigo a symbol of trauma and loss, sometimes linked to settler violence, and traditionally believe that even discussing it gives it power. But Fallout 76 takes that mythology to the next level. The first recorded sighting of a Wendigo in post-apocalyptic Appalachia happened mere days after the bombs dropped. The progenitor was a former Raider gang leader named Morris Stevens, who got exiled from his crew called the Gormans for munching on his fellow members, and then continued the habit privately with his partner Edie. She kept a diary. He eventually did the same to her too, retreated to a cave in the Savage Divide, and finished transforming into the original Appalachian Wendigo. Now every Wendigo in the wasteland traces back to someone who chose to eat people first. There's Camp Counselor Nia, a former pioneer scout who turned during a Campfire Tales event. Scott Conroy was a cryptid hunter who became the very thing he was looking for. The Night Stalker is a legendary glowing Wendigo that slaughtered the entire Sons of Dane compound. And Earl Williams got locked inside Monongah Mine by Hornwright Industries in 2076 before the bombs even fell, and resorted to cannibalism just to survive. He eventually became a Wendigo Colossus. The creature itself looks like a starving humanoid stripped of everything human. Ashen skin, sunken black eyes, claws, jagged teeth, a swollen abdomen, and a piercing scream that summons feral ghouls to its location. Flatwoods Monster. In 1952, real world, 3 witnesses near the town of Flatwoods, West Virginia, watched a bright object cross the night sky and then encountered what they could only describe as a monster, a hovering dark figure with glowing eyes. Their description became one of the most famous UFO encounters of the 20th century, and most people assumed it was a tall tale, an animal, or maybe a barn owl with a particularly bad attitude. Bethesda took this as inspiration. In Fallout 76's Invaders from Beyond update, the Flatwoods Monster is revealed to be exactly what it looked like, a scout for a Zetan invasion fleet. The monster sightings throughout Appalachian history were always alien reconnaissance teams observing humanity, deciding when and how to strike. In 2104, they finally did. The Zetans invaded Appalachia with Flatwoods monsters in their ranks, and although the Vault Dwellers stopped the main invasion, the occasional scout still drifts in at night to probe humanity's defenses. The in-game creature is genuinely unsettling. It hovers instead of walks, with its head encased in a purple helmet that obscures its real face, which, if you catch a glimpse in photo mode, is recognizably Zetan. It has 3 fingers on each hand, no visible legs, and bleeds green when shot, but the worst part is the mind control. A Flatwoods monster can hijack any non-player entity in the game, including Mothman, Scorch Beasts, the Scorch Beast Queen, your own CAMP turrets, and the cargo bots that deliver your supply drops. Anything caught in its purple aura turns hostile against you. It also teleports, regenerates health multiple times, and disappears in a flash of light if you take too long to kill it, leaving you wondering whether you actually saw it, or whether something is watching you from somewhere you can't reach. Mothman. By the time you've heard the Mothman screaming at the moon at 3 in the morning, you're already too deep into the cult. In real-world Appalachian folklore, the Mothman was first sighted in Point Pleasant, West Virginia in 1966, and has been called a harbinger, a creature that appears just before deadly disasters. Fallout 76 took inspiration from that and leveled it up. In the game, the Mothman is real, although calling it the Mothman is misleading, since there are actually many of them, in various eye colors ranging from orange to red to green to magenta. And in 2077, just before the bombs fell, a clandestine group called the Cult of the Mothman summoned one in the chapel beneath the Mothman Museum. The cultist who saw it, Brother Charles, claimed the Mothman warned of a great flood coming the next day. The flood was nuclear fallout. The cultists climbed to the rooftops to prove their faith and were vaporized accordingly, but a small group survived in the Lucky Hole mine, eventually splitting into 2 factions, the Enlightened, who worship a unique purple-eyed wise Mothman, and the followers of the Winged One, who serve the red-eyed holy Mothman by sacrificing humans to it on stone altars. Both factions are still active in Appalachia. The followers keep handcuffed and caged human victims at their camps as offerings. They protect Mothman nests, raise Mothman hatchlings, and extract a holy oil from the eggs to anoint their ceremonial blades. During festivals like the equinox, the enlightened pump massive amounts of neurotoxic moth dust into the air with industrial fans, causing hallucinations and bringing in death claws under the command of their high priests. The dust, by the way, is a real hallucinogen harvested from the wings of every Mothman you kill, which means every time you take one down, you're carrying a sample of whatever's been driving these people to worship it. The Smiling Man. The Smiling Man might be the only creature on this list who introduces himself politely first. He shows up as a random encounter at night in Fallout 76, dressed in an antiquated dark gray suit with a smile stretched far wider than a human face should allow. When you greet him, he tells you his name is Indrid. He quotes 19th century poetry, asks if you can recommend a local peculiarity, and says things like, "I see the moon and the moon sees me," or asks if you've ever danced with a devil under a blue moon. And if you attack him, he disappears in a wisp of shadow, exactly the way a Mothman does, which is the point. In real-world Appalachian folklore, Indrid Cold is a figure tied directly to the Mothman legend. He was reportedly encountered in November 1966 by a man named Woodrow Derenberger, who said a stranger with an unfading smile approached him on the road, spoke telepathically, and assured him he meant no harm, saying that he wanted only happiness for him. That same month, the Mothman was first sighted in Point Pleasant. Researchers have been connecting the two ever since. Fallout 76 inherits all of it. His dialogue includes lines like, "I want only happiness for you," pulled directly from Derenberger's report, and one specifically eerie line about returning from a long absence, claiming he's seeking a seeker who cannot be found. He also seems to have visited Appalachia before. A pre-reclamation day, White Spring Refuge terminal entry describes a catatonic patient brought in by a passing figure calling himself Bob, a patient that staff repeatedly reported feeling cold around, before he disappeared from his bed in the middle of the night without anyone discharging him. The cult member Stephen Scarberry also mentions meeting him. He described the Smiling Man as having a cold personality, and noted with concern that they may be looking for similar things. Think we missed a terrifying Fallout cryptid? Tell us in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more Fallout lore, and we'll see you in the next video.